Good afternoon. My name is Lori Ann, and as you know, Father Dell has asked me to take the relational preaching course through Marian University. I appreciate the friendly faces and am excited for this journey. Our first homily/sermon is supposed to be on the importance of preaching. Hope I do it justice. Romans 10:13-15 states, "For everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. But how can they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how can they believe in him of whom they have not heard? And how can they hear without someone to preach? And how can people preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring the good news." Phew, that's a lot of questions. The verse first tells us that everyone who calls on Jesus will be saved. And that's really good news. Jesus wants us to be with him and to be in a relationship with him. How does this happen? How do we learn more about Jesus and come to a greater belief? We look to our preachers. When I first decided to go into ministry, I was a volunteer catechist who tended bar for a living. I had no formal training. My on-the-job training consisted of showing up with my co-teacher, who also happened to be my best friend, and following along with the textbook. I was a good listener and could relate to the teens, so my love for my ministry grew. On one Easter Sunday, my sister came in and said, "I have a gift for you," and I was like, "Oh, yay," and she handed me her church bulletin. She said, "I circled something inside for you." I said, "Thanks, I went to church today." She goes, "No, dummy, look inside." Did I mention she was my sister? I laughed and looked, and it was a position for a youth minister. And I said, "I have no knowledge, training, degree, etc. to do that." She said, "You'll be perfect." Did I mention she was my sister? Truthfully, I forgot about it until later that week when my best friend and co-teacher asked me to apply to the same exact position. His mom was the director of religious education and thought I would be great at it. I just laughed, shook my head again, and you know that old term, 3 times a charm? The priest at the parish called me personally and asked me to apply. He said he had so many people bring me up, he wanted to know if I would come in for an interview. I was flabbergasted and told him, no, I wouldn't be a good fit. I didn't know anything, I didn't have a degree, I had no formal training. He said, everything you shouldn't say in an interview is what I told him, and he said he would be the judge of that. Brought me in for an interview. Not only hired me, but paid for me to go to the seminary for my lay pastoral certificate. 20 years later, I still work for the church. God has a serious sense of humor. Why do I bring this up? Because the preachers were the ones who got me to where I am. First, it was a family member who went to church and shared the good news with me. Then it was a friend who believed in me and wanted me to deepen my relationship with Jesus. And finally, it was the pastor who ultimately said, "Lori Ann, you have what it takes to do this. I believe in you. God loves you, and if you believe in him, he will guide your steps." Let me tell you, I was so glad they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. They led by their words, their actions, and their support. When I was preparing to write this, I wanted to make sure that everyone knew they were called to be preachers in their own way. To be honest, when Father Dell asked me to take this course, it was a hard no. I break into hives with public speaking, and I stutter, and I make no sense. So he encouraged me by saying, "We need more preachers. You have what it takes to do this. I believe in you." Do you sense the theme? I told you, God has a sense of humor. Does everyone need to stand up at church and be a homilist? Absolutely not. But everyone has been called to preach. Preach the good news in their own ways, in their own words, in their own spaces. Have you ever heard the quote, "Preach the gospel at all times, and when necessary, use words"? It's attributed to St. Francis of Assisi. It emphasizes living a life that reflects Christian values and actions rather than just talking about them. It fits really well with this passage, in so much that it's calling each of us to go out and proclaim the good news. Maybe you proclaim the good news by volunteering in your community, sharing your love with Jesus over coffee with friends, taking part in ministering during Mass, or just being the cheerleader in the background, telling the people around you God loves you. You are worthy of this call. You can do it. I believe in you. Preaching is important, and we can all do it.